Hey there, and welcome to Fast Forward, a new podcast from QSR Magazine, where we talk to fast casual restaurant founders and executives about their companies, how they've built their companies from day one, all the challenges that they have overcome, and what they are doing to prepare for the future and where they're going into the future. My name is Sam Oches. I'm the editor of QSR Magazine and the editorial director of Food News Media. And I'm so excited to launch this podcast. There are so many great stories out there in the fast casual industry that we get to talk to these people on a regular basis, and we want to share those conversations with the world and get inside the minds of some of these big thinkers and entrepreneurs who are really designing the fast casual restaurant industry of the future. On our episode today, I am thrilled to welcome Rick and Elise Wetzel. Rick and Elise are the co-founders of Wetzels Pretzels, a pretzel chain that began in the 90s. But today, you might know them best as the co-founders of Blaze Pizza. Blaze is just one of the most incredible success stories in the fast casual industry today. They launched in 2012, and they are now already more than 300 units strong. They have an incredible base of support behind them and their investors and their franchisees. They count people like LeBron James as an investor. He's also their spokesman. It's just an incredible story, and it's all happened in just about 6 or 7 years. And so I wanted to go and talk to Rick and Elise about that success and hear from them a little bit more about where Blaze Pizza came from and some of those challenges that they have overcome in trying to get there. So I traveled out to Pasadena, California in the summer of 2018 and sat down with Rick and Elise at their headquarters, and I got the firsthand account of where Blaze Pizza came from, where the idea came from, where it's going, and just a little bit more of the details about what it's like to compete in this industry. And competition is really that's probably the main focus of this conversation, as you'll see, because as you might know, fast casual pizza is just an incredibly full, busy, exciting industry, but there are dozens and dozens of companies out there that are striving to be the top fast casual pizza player and striving to capture that audience of hungry pizza fans who might come in for lunch or want to come in for a personal-sized pizza. And I got to tell you, too, from just my perspective here at QSR, I get a little cynical when I see trends take off and a lot of companies jumping into the category trying to capitalize on that trend. And I thought that would be the same thing with fast casual pizza. But what we've seen with this category is just a lot of really smart people opening really impressive, well thought through brands. And there's no doubt that Blaze Pizza is among the leaders, if not the leader in that category. And Rick and Elise, their know-how, their just obviously their experience from Wetzels Pretzels, and just their tenacity in building a brand from day one to be this franchised, efficient, scalable concept is obviously proving to be just a great success story today. So I'm really excited to share this conversation with you today on the first episode of Fast Forward. And stay tuned for more episodes of this. We've got a lot of great, exciting conversations coming from other fast casual founders and entrepreneurs. Lots of really interesting stories, tips, and insights into what it's like to start and build a fast casual restaurant brand. So without further ado, I am going to roll into our conversation with Rick and Elise Wetzel, talking about how they built Blaze Pizza. All right, I am sitting here with Rick and Elise Wetzel from Blaze Pizza. Guys, thanks so much for joining me.
Great.
Happy to be here.
Glad to be here.
So let's walk back all the way to pre-Blaze Pizza days. Obviously, Rick, you had co-founded Wetzels Pretzels. Right. Tell me first where the genesis of Wetzels Pretzels came from. What were you doing before that, and how did you get that idea to launch that business?
Well, I have to trace all my good ideas back to my my lovely, smart wife, Elise. She doesn't like me doing that. But anyway, she had stumbled onto the idea, and this is back in the early 90s, the idea of fresh baked pretzels. And in fact, what happened was she was in our kitchen, and I caught her in our kitchen with a Betty Crocker cookbook trying to flesh the concept out. And I do have to add that she was not doing a very good job. They were some horribly horrible pretzels that she was making. But then a couple days later, I'm working at Nestle at the time in brand management and marketing, and I was on a business trip with what was soon to become, and I didn't know, my business partner Bill Phelps, and he and I were on this trip. We're up in Seattle, and just in a moment when we were leaving the plane, I was just making conversation, and I just said, "Hey, Elise is like playing around with this idea for fresh baked pretzels," and at that moment, another traveler next to us spun around and said, "Oh, I've heard of these things, and they're really good." And that kind of like, it was almost like getting the hook in your mouth. It like that random person saying that cinched it in. And so Bill and I spent the rest of our trip just talking about this concept of doing fresh baked pretzels. And I remember we landed in Burbank Airport, and as we were leaving the plane, we stood up, and Bill looked at me and goes, it was April in '94, and he looked at me and said, "We'll be open by Thanksgiving." And we actually opened the first Wetzels Pretzel store on Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. So we actually made that in about 6 months, and we went into business. So it wasn't planned. It just sort of was this idea that popped up. It turns out Bill's also very entrepreneurial, and so before we kind of met up, and before you know it, off we went. So I stole the idea from Elise. We went out and we started Wetzels.
Elise, what was your career prior to Wetzels?
I worked in brand management as well with Rick at Nestle, and I crafted a career in new products. And so I've introduced everything from new candy bars to new nutritional beverages, everything with a new spin. So I'm kind of the eye of the consumer. That's really where I've crafted my specialty. So
why was the timing right at that point for Wetzels in the 90s? I mean, what was the magic that allowed that brand to really take off?
I think at the time it was just the trends towards fresh food and fresh baked, and there was sort of the malls are doing well at the time, and there was the opportunity for other snack foods. I think Mrs. Fields cookies had been doing well for some time, and sort of I think there was just an opportunity for another snack food in the malls, and we sort of rode that wave. So.
Much healthier alternative
to
chocolate chip cookie or what was
available. We call it kind of guilt-free. It was sort of a guilt-free item. I think about 70% of people inside malls are women, and women look for more of a guilt-free snack. And so it was better. It was a better snack for them than a cookie or an ice cream or a corn dog.
Mm-hmm. So then almost 20 years passes, I guess 15 to 20 years before the idea for Blaze Pizza pops up. What's the genesis of that? Where did that come from?
All right. You want to?
This was another Elise idea.
Oh, well, this one we worked on. We certainly worked on it together. But, Rick and I had been thinking that it would be fun to do concept together, another one. And we were swirling around some different ideas, but it was really when we were sitting in a Chipotle right down the street. We'd gone to a meeting, and we wanted pizza for lunch, and but we didn't have time to sit down for waiter service. And the options for fast pizza were, not really. We didn't want to get something that had been a reheated slice, so we ended up at a Chipotle. And we're sitting there at that Chipotle watching the people travel down the line, and we knew that assembly line application would work perfectly for pizza. And we know how quickly pizzas can cook. We've seen them in nice restaurants before. And it was just this aha moment as we thought about our need for pizza and sat in that Chipotle. We said this application could absolutely work. So it was literally during that lunch, we grabbed a napkin and we sketched it out. And we said, you'd kind of do it this way. I think you'd have the line flow that way. This is where you'd have the ingredients work. And I don't see why this couldn't work. So sometimes an idea bites you. And this was one where I remember us leaving that lunch and saying, we're going to open a pizza place, aren't we? And we looked at each other and said, yeah, we're going to do this.
If you look at as we got home, we're marketing people, and we're, very strategic, and you start peeling the category back, and you look at it and you go, well, sandwiches have fired off. If you look at the big categories, and chicken has fired off, and Mexican has fired off, and with burritos, and the only one that hasn't gone is pizza. Of all the big top categories. And really the missing piece was, like when Chipotle, and we have really admired Chipotle, always have and still do to this day, and really look to them as a beacon in our own industry. But the difference is that, where Chipotle has fresh food and you assemble it and get it right at the register, we were going to need to add that one extra element of cooking it after the customer orders. And so it required a couple of creative applications to make it work. And I like to use the analogy of back up how the Xerox copier was invented. It was actually 5 existing technologies that were lined up one after the other that created the opportunity to make Xerox. So there was no invention to create a Xerox copier. It was just some bright person that figured out at Xerox how to put those 5 things in a row and make a copier. And for us, it was like, how do you break through, and how do we do really fresh pizza really fast? And really the 2 ends of it were coming up with the press. So we definitely wanted to use fresh dough, but to be able to press it right in front of the customer and have it instantly ready to go rather than hand tossing it, that was an important component. And then after you make it, we needed what we wanted, a very authentic oven to cook it in. We didn't want to use conveyor ovens, but it needed to go fast. And so what had happened just prior to us deciding to enter this category is earlier CPK had been working with an oven manufacturer to convert a wood-fired oven into gas, and so that was sort of the missing piece. So as far as like being scalable and having a good authentic oven that was easy to operate, that sort of cracked the code. So with this press on one end, and then all of our fresh ingredients, and then an open hearth oven that ran on gas at the other end. And then, of course, the food trends of it being thin artisanal pizza, which cooks fast, gave us the ability to fire these pizzas off in we like to say, in 180 seconds. So in about the time that you pay and go get your drink at the self-serve drink station, your pizza's done. And so we actually could somewhat mimic the speed of service of Chipotle and basically have your pizza ready for you about the time that you're ready to head to your table.
So you had to figure all those things out. You had to put all those pieces together. What was the time frame that you guys took in order to launch Blaze Pizza?
Well, it was probably a year, flash to bang. I will say that when we came up with the idea, we made a commitment to build something that we would both be really, really proud of at the end. So there are lots of ways, that you could possibly go about this. So from the beginning, when we were sketching it out, we said we'd like one in our community, and we'd like something that we're very, very excited to send our friends to. So that became kind of a true north light for us, is to do something with great execution. There were certain ways that you could enter this market that would be a little bit lower scale, a smaller space. You could get a conveyor oven and put something through. You could have inexpensive ingredients and maybe push a lot of these sites out. And we said, you know what, we're going to do things properly. So And one of the first decisions was we're going to cook by fire. To do things properly, we really felt that the flame was a part of the drama, and it actually makes for better food. So that was part of why we called the concept Blaze, was in celebration of the fire. And one other thing we did from the very beginning is we said, if we want this concept to be as exceptional as we, our idea stands, we need a chef. So very early on, it was the very first thing we did, is we started looking for someone who we could partner with in this process, and that was where we found Chef Brad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then what was that process like, kind of adding the culinary component? Because I know Chef Brad had a pizza concept before, so obviously he was very versed in how to make great pizza. But how do you then take this culinary idea and a chef application and put that into the fast casual model that you were building?
Well, Brad's a very unique individual, and it was already in the pizza business. He had in Zagat, he had the second highest rated pizza in Los Angeles. I think there were like 170 pizza concepts listed in Zagat. And he was only behind Nancy Silverton at Mozza. She had a 27, and he had a 26. So really knows pizza. His background, he's a graduate of the Culinary Institute of America out of Hyde Park. He's got a business degree from USC, and he's also got a food scientist degree. So he's a very unique individual. And, when we brought him in, and Elise likes to tell the story about how it was the luckiest Google search ever to find him, because she typed into Google Los Angeles pizza consultant, and his name came up. And in fact, he wasn't a consultant. He just had been one once, and we found him. But, really how we put it together. So we sat across the table from Brad, and we had some very specific ideas of how we wanted to bolt this thing together. Because from day one, we felt like we were going to scale this thing. It was going to be a franchise concept. We were going to go really fast. We were going to open a lot of them. We always said we're going to build 1,000 of these, and we said that from before we opened the first restaurant. So we sat across the table from Brad, and basically the way I remember explaining it to him was, you push me on culinary, and I'm going to push you on process and speed of service. And we're going to go back and forth. And I go, sometimes you're going to win 95 or even 100%, and sometimes I'm going to win and you're going to get 5%. So there's going to be trade-offs, and we're going to make it as good as we can, with the end goal being let's have a really good food. Let's have it go really fast. We want it to look really, really simple, but underneath it, it's going to be very complicated to figure out what we're going to do. But we're going to work very, very hard to make it look very simple, and that's actually a real strategic advantage, because so many others enter this category. They look at what we're doing and it looks very easy, but underneath it, there was a lot of work that went in. And I can give you one example was, we use fresh dough. It's all fermented 24 hours overnight, and but dough is very fickle. It's a living and breathing, and it's got gluten in it. And so depending on the weather, depending on the temperature of the water, depending on so many variables, was it proofed long or too short or whatever, it will act very, very differently. And so we were very early on getting the pies coming through, and they were all different sizes. And by the way, something that I see with all of our competitors to this day, where you don't know what size pizza you're going to get out. But we were able to get with Brad and say, Brad, figure this out, so that every single time, no matter whether we any variable that could hit it, I need a full-size pizza coming out every single time. And for us, the bar is that when we drop it into the box, it touches all four sides, and we do it virtually 100% of the time. But again, something that you wouldn't know, all the work that went in, and all the effort that Brad put in to get to that point, and it was not easy. But that's our outcome, because we've got the processes and things to make that happen. And we did that 1,000 times. And we like to say, it's 1,000 little dials set just our way. And there are literally 1,000 different things that we've had to touch to make Blaze, Blaze.
Mm-hmm. I sat next to Brad when he was being so meticulous with the sourcing of those ingredients. And so we shared these two little cubes side by side in some rented office space. And I watched him taste, I don't know, dozens of olive oils. We tasted so many different meatballs. And, finally a sample would come. I said, this must be it. And he would taste it and reject it. And we'd go to another one. When we opened, we had 3 or 4 different salts in the first restaurant. Like, really? Could we not have one? But no, different salts serve different purposes. And so he was very careful. And that's why the food is so insanely great, especially the dough. I mean, Brad's signature dough, he gave me quite an education, and I have such an appreciation for it now. It's light as air, and when you have a Blaze pizza, which is really Brad's recipe that he was selling at his Oleo Pizzeria, now we have a claim to that. It's a really light feeling. You don't walk away with a food baby at the end, a really heavy pizza feeling. There's something special about the fermentation process, the way he's put the whole thing together. The fact that the dough is made fresh, I couldn't dream of bringing this concept to market with frozen dough. And that has always been something that he has stood for from the beginning, and we've always had a commitment to. So
we had, you could imagine, as we're like bringing this thing out of the ground, we needed a true north for ourselves, or a way to answer our questions, and we would say WWCD, what would Chipotle do? So this is like 2011, and so at every turn we'd say, okay, if we're gonna pick an oven, what would Chipotle do? If Chipotle was gonna make dough, what would they do? Would they use a frozen dough, or would they use a fresh dough? Well, Chipotle would use a fresh dough, and and so we kind of, that anytime that we didn't know what we should do, we'd kind of run that through our head and go, well, if Chipotle was doing this, how would they do it? And it was actually a pretty good beacon, because they have such a focus on the quality of the food and the speed of service and the guest experience. We just applied it down to what we were doing.
And that was where the trends were going. I mean, obviously Chipotle was really kind of leading the way in a lot of these certainly fast casual trends, and where the customer was starting to reorient themselves. But what's interesting is, talking about how pizza was the last one to go. Pizza is a really established American favorite, something that's been around for generations now, and you guys were essentially reinventing it in some ways. Was that daunting, to reinvent this massively popular menu item?
Absolutely. And a lot of people thought we were crazy. What are there, 75,000 pizza places in the United States? And to find your opening was the hard part. But when we actually laid it all out, and it goes back to the very beginning of the genesis of the idea, despite having all of those pizza places in America, it was still really hard to find a high quality, insanely great pizza, artisanal style pizza, fast for lunch. It was like this big hole opening in the category. I mean, 75,000 pizza places. To come up with the name Blaze Pizza, our trademark attorney said, "You're crazy, you'll never get it," because everything that has to do with pizza or fire has been claimed. So we were very fortunate. We did some research over the weekend. We said, I think we will get it, and we did.
When you look at a quadrant, and you go, yeah, here's a category with 4 players, between Domino's, Pizza Hut, Papa John's, and Little Caesars, with 35,000 pizzerias and about half of the market. You'd look at it and go, you're crazy to try to enter a category like that. But we literally found an entire quadrant being fresh pizza at lunch was completely wide open. We felt so good about it that we built 2 restaurants at the same time. So we opened 2 at once because we weren't sure of the real estate, and I wanted 2 at-bats so that if one didn't work, I still would have one that I could say it does work and let's keep going. I didn't want to fail on one. So it was, I've been called crazy before. I know when I left Wetzels, or when I left Nestle and started Wetzels, I went from a really nice job at Nestle that I had, gotten an MBA and worked my way up. I'd been there 7 years, and I quit it. And the very next day, both Bill and I were down at the mall, and we're wearing T-shirts, working behind the counter with a bunch of 15-year-old kids, and people thought we were crazy for doing that. But it was really exciting. So when we turned around and did this and said we're going in the pizza business, people again said, "What are you doing? Are you crazy?" But it's sort of like we were like, "No, I can see this. I can see this hole just like big as can be," and we knew we were gonna run through it.
Opening 2 restaurants at once, did you try different things in each of them to see what might work and what might not?
No, they were virtually identical. The only difference was the real estate. One we put next to UC Irvine, so a university location. The other one we did here in Pasadena in a more commercial district with some theater and office space around it. So very different clientele. We just needed to kind of see what would happen. But we opened up and we ended up with 7 lunches and 7 dinners. It was crazy because both of them during the week you would get the lunch crowds, whether it was the students or the office workers. Then at dinner you were getting families coming in. On weekends we're getting soccer teams coming in on Saturday during the day. So we were very fortunate. Whereas like a Domino's and a Pizza, it's by the way why our AUVs are so high, because like a Domino's and a Pizza Hut, they just run on dinner, and we're able to run on lunch and dinner. We do roughly 50-50, depending on the real estate, lunch to dinner, and we'll blow right through the weekend and just never miss a beat. So that's how we got the AUVs where they are.
It is a challenge to start a brand from scratch, although it's a little easier to do it these days in many ways because of social media. In the old days, you needed millions of dollars. You had to go onto TV or buy some sort of broad general awareness plan. But these days, there's a lot more organic ways that you can do it. When we opened up in Irvine, it was in a university location, and even though it was the end of summer, there were still a lot of students around, and so they are the masters of social media, and that gave us a lot of wind at our back. But I'll always remember the strategy we had is we said we were going to give everyone a free pizza, just like us on Facebook on a certain day, and we'll give you a free pizza. And I told my team the day before the event, I don't know that there are going to be that many people that turn out because there's just 300 people on our Facebook page, and most of them are my friends in Pasadena who are not going to be in Irvine tomorrow. So it'll be all right, guys. And then the next morning, I woke up and there were 1,000 people that had liked our Facebook page. And by the end of the night, there were 2,000 who had liked the page. And I swear every single one of them came out to Irvine and was handed a free pizza that day. So that was the beginning of the Blaze brand back then, August of 2012.
College students and free food. That is a magical
It went
combination.
viral very quickly.
I've been reading some articles lately on like disruption and almost like looking backwards, trying to figure out where the success came from. And this one article that really hit me was it talked about how you find these friction points in categories, and that's how you enter an existing category. And they talked about how Netflix entered the video rental business, and then how they disrupt, and then they disrupt again. So for them, the friction point in the rental business was late fees. In fact, that's what allowed Netflix to write in, because at Blockbuster Video, you forget to take it back. You start accruing $1 a day. Now, it's just $1 a day, but for some reason it was like a big emotional deal that you didn't get your tape back. And so Netflix came in and said, we'll mail you a CD and keep it as long as you want. And people aren't thinking about the $9.95 a month, but they were thinking about, I don't have to get this thing back tomorrow. So that was their friction point. And for us, as I look back on it, I think that it could be that our friction point was paying for toppings. And how many times have you ordered from Domino's or Pizza Hut, and you're sitting there going, okay, what kind of pizza do I want? And you go, okay, I want pepperoni and sausage, and then, okay, $1, and then you go, okay, now I want onions. And they go, that's $1. And you go, well, I don't know if onions are worth $1. And I want olives, and I don't know if that's worth another $1. So it starts becoming, you don't actually get to build the pizza that you want because you're sort of tapped out at, well, you get 2 toppings for that price. And so for us, the idea of unlimited toppings or anything you want on it anyway, all one price, I think was that was kind of unique and breakthrough. And besides just the concept of build it yourself and it goes very fast and it's lunch and fast casual, all those other things, but just the fact that that's a big turn for the pizza category, that you put whatever you want on it and we're not going to charge you for it.
What did you guys take from Wetzels? What were some of the lessons you pulled from that business and applied to Blaze?
Well, we over there we learned franchising and we learned real estate, and one of the things I learned over there was how much I admired franchising and how powerful it could be. And when you apply franchising the right way, and you oftentimes you can apply it either in a category that has a high CapEx, or you can apply it to a category that needs to go very fast. For example, fast casual pizza, where there's going to be a run on the real estate and you need to outrun everyone else. And so really knowing franchising, and we really applied it over here, that we wanted to build a new style of franchise company, and we think we've done that. And we basically put it together. We said we're going to have just a small group, like 40 to 50 franchise partners. And we want to have a very, very friendly franchise document. We want to have a lot of transparency, a lot of communication, and what we wanted was to have almost compares to the Major League Baseball, and say every single franchise partner in our team is going to be a baseball team owner, and we'll be the league commissioner, and we're going to sit at the table, and so we're all going to talk, and everyone's going to know each other, and we'll drive, but you're going to tell us what to do, and when a majority of you raise a topic or an issue, we're going to adapt and listen to it. And so that's sort of the culture that we built. And, that was, learned from Wetzels. And, it's sort of like kind of growing up. We learned how to build a brand. We learned how to spot trends. I mean, I don't know. I'm 60 years old now. So what did I learn over 30 years over there? Just a lot of, filters and lenses and ways of working with people. Certainly had a great Rolodex.
You worked with dough. So
I worked with dough. It's a different dough. It's very different protein levels and things.
You talk about disruption. I think that's a word you used, and I think that our relationships that we've crafted with our franchise community, the way we've built that, has been very disruptive. I think we, in a way that we have done things differently. We thought unconventionally about how to bring them in and how to involve them. The amount of communication we have with our partners and the positive community that we've created, I think, is unparalleled in this industry. I think we could be very proud of that. And just another source of disruption is just the unconventionality in the way we approach the brand. I mean, we haven't talked too much about how we've built the brand itself, but it was a time when fast casual was emerging, and there was a lot of better, it's a time of better ingredients and less processed foods, but also we gave different approaches to the dining room, the facility itself. And so I think it was very disruptive of us to change the materials that were used. Every single one of our restaurants looks differently. So in the day, lots of concepts were punching out one after the other. And our philosophy has always been that no two Blazes should look alike, just like no two pizzas look alike, no two restaurants look alike. And so there's a lot of nods to the local community in there, and a lot of just thought to the dining facility itself.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, well, besides bringing Brad in as a chef, we brought Anna Hinton in as a restaurant designer who was doing a lot of boutique stuff around L.A. And of quite well regarded and winning lots of awards and doing just spectacular things, and bringing her in. And she got excited about the idea of working with us because she'd never done anything at scale before. So she touches every single one of our sets of plans, even though we have architects and designers and that do the layouts. But she comes in and puts her special touch on everyone, and she's just amazingly deadly at putting these things together really nicely. When we started out, and I remember meeting with we were meeting with Brad and we were meeting with Anna to get this whole thing set up, and our goal was to have a restaurant that you would walk into and feel like you were home. You would feel like some connection, and without being able to put your finger on it. Like, we just felt like we wanted you to say, this is where you can get a little 30-minute break, and this is where I want to be. And we want the reaction to be, if people are standing up at lunch and saying, where do you want to go? We don't want people to say, hey, do you want to go get pizza? Where do you want to go? We want people to say, hey, who wants to go to Blaze? And pizza happens to be what we serve there. So we do a very good job with pizza, but the experience and we like to say we're more of a lifestyle brand. And that's kind of how have always thought about it, sort of a mindset for the brand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Rick, you mentioned before you wanted to go fast. You wanted to scale this very quickly. Doing that and doing it through franchising and doing it with a very high quality concept, what's the secret sauce to getting that right? Because if you go quickly and you do it with franchisees and you do it with a very quality product and environment, obviously there's a lot of risk for it going off the rails. How did you keep it from going off the rails?
One, we believed in investing in talent early on. We like to say that people aren't just in time. You've got to get them ahead of the curve. And so I know with only one restaurant, well, Brad and Anna were on the team with no restaurants. We brought in Carolyn Kennedy as our head of development when we had one restaurant. She was actually running franchise development for Buffalo Wild Wings. And it's funny because I got her on the phone through a headhunter, and she said, you had me in 10 minutes. Like, I was going to quit. I knew I was going to quit my job at Buffalo Wild Wings and come on board with a one-store chain. We brought in, she brought us Jim Biddix, who was running Texas for Carl's Jr. She said, absolutely the most talented operations person I've ever met. We've got to have him on board. And then we brought in, and that was at 2 restaurants, and then I think around 2, we also brought in Jim Mises, who had been instrumental in growing up Noah's Bagels. Had met Noah when he was very young and grew him up. Was at Jamba Juice, grew that up, and then had been at Freebirds. Really, really talented people. So those 3 coming on board were very important. And then, and Carolyn was sort of the gateway to bring in the franchise partners in. And what we did, and this gets to how we grew and kept the wheels on the bus, is that, one, we wrote a very fair franchise document, very transparent, and but we would bring the groups in. We would have long conversations about what our vision was and what they were looking for in a concept. And every single group we sold to had another concept or more. And so we would have long discussions, and it was a very long courtship for any of them and all of them, where we really got to know them and had, they had to buy into the vision and understand, what the give and take was. And we gave them a lot, and then they gave us a lot. We took a lot of control. We took control over social media, for example. Like, they're not allowed to do their own Facebook page or their own Instagram account. Like, it all stayed here, but we gave them big markets and a lot of autonomy. And then we monitor. It's interesting. So we're all on board, and we have a lot of communication, and everybody, we know that they're all good operators. And you watch our Yelp scores over time. So our Yelp scores from 2 to 10 to 50 to 100 to 200. Our Yelp scores have gone up through that period. When you would think we would start weakening and going down, we've actually gotten stronger as we've gone up the curve. And it's really a testament to the processes and systems and people that we got in place early on, and the franchise partners that we brought in, and their willingness and ability to execute well, and sort of everyone buying into the vision, which I think was probably the most critical thing. I remember Carolyn was very far down the road with a 50-unit Taco Bell franchisee, and then one day I said, what happened with that group? And she says, I kicked them to the curb. I go, what? And she said, yeah, they're asking the wrong questions. We weren't aligned. She says, we weren't aligned, and I'm not going to bring a group like that in. So she was really good about keeping getting the ones that really were going to align with us and getting them in the door. So really, I think that's sort of a lot of the keys.
You make a good point about speed, and the challenge of maintaining the quality of the execution of what you're putting together. And also there's some debate of company-owned restaurants having more control versus franchise partners, and whether or not you're going to be able to keep control of your brand that way. And I think that we have done an exceptional job of gaining great alignment with our franchise partners. And so we're able to get the best of both worlds. We're able to develop much more quickly with 40-some partners out there, each tackling their own markets. But we develop all of the creative pieces in-house. All of the collateral is done here. And they understand that it's in everyone's best interest that we make this brand as strong as possible. We all talk about the fact that each of them may be out there opening restaurants. Each of them is building their businesses. But ultimately, together, we are all building a brand. And the strength of their businesses, the strength of their restaurants, is ultimately going to be determined by the strength of the brand that they build. So we all lock arms and have had a very good collaboration in only delivering the brand in Blaze ways. So when they want to do something different, they'll submit a variance report. And I have 2 buttons on my desk. One says yes and one says no. And we, especially when we were younger, we hit the no button a lot as we were giving guardrails to our franchise partners about how we were going to operate in this world of fast casual. So I think that alignment was really important to us, especially at the beginning.
And who were these franchisees? You mentioned, obviously wanting strong franchise partners, and you knew kind of how many you wanted. So what was the sort of profile of the ideal franchise partner?
I think early on, well, let me start by saying that when they would come through the door, even though they would have a resume that say they were very strong, if they didn't come through the door and also be hungry, we wouldn't sell to them. We didn't want groups that had a lot of other restaurants, but were just stuffing their coffers with other brands. So that was very important because we knew we were going to have to go fast. But I mean, in the end, we got, some of the bigger ones. We got Junior Bridgman, who owns 300 Wendy's and Chili's, was a big one for us. And to this day, they're great operators and have built a lot of restaurants. Another one was Larry Levy, who is a big restaurateur from Chicago area. Went on to found Levy Restaurant Group, which operates in a lot of stadiums around the country, and Compass owns that now. But Larry fell in love with the brand and had a great infrastructure, and he came on board. So a lot of groups like that. I think we've got up in New York a group called the Lessons that are like 6 generations of food service operators, and they in fact they were the first ones to pour fountain Coca-Cola in Manhattan in like 1800 and something. So just really good groups, and as we added more groups, it became more and more important that each one that we added, we felt like was going to be a good addition to the team, and we're going to get along with the other. So each incremental one became more tricky to get. We think about it like putting an orchestra together, and we're looking for a whole host of people that bring different talents to the table. So, but we were fortunate. We got thousands and thousands of franchise leads, and so when you have that many, you can really pick through them and get the best ones. And when we hit the field, we said we were going to do franchising. Like, we were writing our franchise doc while we were like developing recipes. Like, this was our model. This was going to be our model, because we love franchising, and what turned out to be some of our main competitors on the field were all adopting company store strategies, and so we got a good run where we were able to go very fast, where company store strategy can be much slower. And it took them some time, and ultimately, every single one of them pivoted over to franchising. But that's not an easy thing to do. When you build your company to be a company store company, you think differently, you operate differently, and versus when you build one to be a franchise company. And we were, from day one, franchise company from day one, second make line in every single store from day one, the same POS in every single store, and it's the same one we're putting in today. The same oven in every single store. And we've watched our competitors, a lot of them, having to try to figure things out that didn't make good decisions initially, and so they're having to kind of steer around. And a lot of the stuff we did in the very first restaurant is still working today. So we're not having to spin our wheels trying to fix things. We're spinning our wheels. No, we're not spinning our wheels. We're getting traction and going ahead.
I really think I credit a lot of our strength to the team of franchise partners that we assembled, and it was really wonderful when we were meeting with them in the beginning. We talked to so many different groups, and you talk about the need for them to be hungry. The other thing that I found was a common theme was they all wanted to grow. They all had people in their current businesses that they were in, a lot of them in QSR, or some of them in casual dining, but they were looking for paths for growth for their team members, which I think is very admirable. They're all, just like us, they are entrepreneurs, and we have to respect that and harness the power of that. So they were looking for growth, and often they would have a concept that was in fast food, and they were very much forward thinking, saying, where's the puck moving to? Where is business going? And sometimes you'd meet a group with a family business, and they didn't want to hand down a fast food concept to the kids. The kids were looking at them like, what else have you got? Right. So I think that Blaze has fit the bill for so many of them, and because they're so entrepreneurial, they loved, and we have loved, being able to work with them from the very beginning of this concept.
So we've talked about the competition some. Let's talk about that a little bit deeper, because obviously, I mean, I don't think
there's no competition.
Did we talk about?
I don't think the restaurant industry has ever seen anything quite like the fast casual pizza explosion that happened shortly after you guys launched. Mm-hmm. And you know, now we can look back with some hindsight and see how that all played out. And you know, the field has thinned as well. And you guys quickly elevated to that sort of leadership position. But I imagine you're constantly thinking about competition, because you mentioned real estate. That must be an ongoing issue. So I guess tell me how you approach the competition, how you view the competition, and how you can ensure that Blaze is always staying one step ahead.
Well, you know, it's our competition isn't, you know, another fast casual pizza. Our competition is food. Our competition is QSR. It's casual dining. It's every other choice that a guest has to eat, and even grocery stores. So really, what we've done a lot of is to really evolve the concept. And if you look at, you know, all the initiatives that we've undertaken, we like to say this is only our 6th summer in business. Like literally, we're that young, yet we're about to open our 300th restaurant, and we're already in 5 countries. And so it has gone up the curve very fast, but we've done so much in menu innovation and upgrading a lot of the food. I know we went from packaged salads to fresh salads on the line. We added agua frescas. We added draft beer. We added all kinds of bottled beverages. We expanded our dessert menu. We adopted a strategy of seasonal offerings. So a lot of things on the food front. On the restaurant side, we've really worked to enhance the design of the restaurants and built a culture of constantly moving the restaurant design forward. In fact, we were fortunate to get to go up to Starbucks and meet with their design team and understand how they think about design. And we adopted a lot of that here, where we keep our toolkit constantly evolving. So every single restaurant might have something new that the last one didn't have. And so over time, they all kind of just keep moving forward, and we don't have to just stop and do one big refresh. We've done a lot in technology. I mean, you just think about the landscape of where this thing's going. We built in our first restaurants, we put a second make line because we saw that, I knew that Chipotle was doing it in their back of house. I knew they had one, so we said, we need to have one. And we put a second make line, and it's from the very first restaurant. I had no idea that you know, these apps were coming out, and online ordering and the takeout and the third-party delivery was about to hit. And in fact, that's just like almost brand new. But we've done a lot to keep up with that. But if you look at technology, if you look at the mobile app and you look at third-party delivery, both of those have a huge impact across not just QSR, but fast casual and casual dining. It basically levels the playing field. I can get delivery of McDonald's or Blaze or Applebee's, and it's the exact same experience on my phone to have it delivered to my house. And so all of a sudden, we're competing with all of those groups all at once. And so, you know, the price we charge and the quality becomes so much more important. You're not actually even walking into our restaurant anymore. Like, it's not the four-wall experience, but it's like, you know, what's it going to be like there? So, and the same thing with takeout. If it's just as easy to order on my app and have a little takeout station. I can go to Panera or Blaze or Applebee's or McDonald's and have it sitting right inside the door. Again, level playing field. So, I'm not focused on fast casual pizza. I pretty early on, surveyed who was out there, figured out that we knew what it would take to be successful. We did our things, and we're more competing with McDonald's and Taco Bell and Applebee's and Panera Bread and Chipotle and all those other guys. I mean, that's where we really are.
How do you rise above that? I mean, that to me would seem very daunting, that you're competing with everybody. So obviously you put out a quality product. Is that enough? I mean, how else can you rise above the competition?
We don't just put out a quality product.
I mean, I really think that our food sets us apart. So isn't everybody competing with everybody? So for us, I think that we pay a lot of attention to the 360-degree experience that the guest has from the moment they come inside the restaurant. We're looking at every one of the little details, and food ultimately is what sets us apart. I think we're doing a lot in innovation. What we know is it's true that now more than ever there are so many different concepts, and guests want what's new. It used to be that you could put a concept out there. Chipotle didn't have hardly any menu innovation for a long time, and that was our beacon. And what we've come to find is that it is important that when a guest walks into the restaurant that there is something that they haven't seen before, that they haven't taken a picture of before. I used to think, well, we have 40 ingredients, so that's a million different pizzas you could make. Why would we need to innovate? But actually, as we've evolved and changed, that's something that we've come to find is very important and valued by our guests.
So let's talk about the future. I mean, we now have 7 years behind us of watching this company and this industry be able to grow and evolve. And, it's pretty mature at this point. And, we know who the leaders are, and we know you guys are really leading the way. Where does it go from here? Paint me a picture of what the next 5 to 10 years of fast casual pizza, but specifically Blaze, looks like, and how you can take it to the next level.
Well, I'll say we have a couple of core tenets that you'll find with us. We are a brand that embraces unconventionality, and we are committed to excellence in our food, like insanely great food. So that you'll see those two things from Blaze. We will be cooking things by fire. We will be preparing things fresh. We will be using only clean ingredients, and we'll be putting our spin on it. I mean, one of the things we do great is we take recipes and food that are available in higher end restaurants, and we're democratizing it. We're making it accessible to everyone. Brad's $15 Oleo pizza is now available for a much smaller price, about $8 or less in a Blaze. And I think that's really cool. And it's available at a lunch speed, lunch price. So I think that, what goes forward for us, can the menu get broader? Absolutely. I think there'll be some really innovative things that you'll see come out of our restaurants. But they're always going to have the tenets of clean ingredients, cooked by fire, and doing things with a little bit of a wink in the way we approach them.
What do you think, Rick? What do you think the future holds for Blaze?
1,000 restaurants.
International.
No, we've gone international now with Al Shaya. And we're just kind of locking down our markets, and we're building up our customer bases, and we're growing our awareness and growing our same store sales and growing our AUVs, and just sort of doing the blocking and tackling right now. We're up at 30,000 feet. We're at cruise altitude. There's a lot that's going on in our industry and lots of internal changes, but I think we're still very, very steady. I was speaking with a former COO of one of our big competitors the other day, and he was saying, one thing I admire about you guys, and I found it very, I appreciated that he recognized this, and I was very humbled by it. But he said, you guys one thing about you're so steady, like you don't veer, like you just execute, and really, that's kind of how we are. We put ourselves on a path back in 2012, and we've been very steady with that path. Virtually everyone here in the office has been here since when they started. We don't lose anyone. There's huge muscle memory inside of everyone. So now we're all very, very focused on, and through the great leadership of Jim and Carolyn and others here, we're just working to continue to grow this. Our goal for all of us, and it's for all of our franchise partners and all of us, is that we want to create an enduring brand. We want to create something that outlives all of us, and something that we can point to and say, you know what, in our lifetimes, we did this. Elise and I, we're branding people. We're marketers from Nestle. If you say to me, what are you? I'd say I'm a marketing guy. And what we want to do is build a brand. And I think it's very different than how a lot of people approach. It's how we approached with Wetzels, with pretzels. It's how we're approaching it here. Is that we're building a brand, and with brand, a connection to a guest.
I have a large handwritten sign in my office, and it says, "Enjoy the journey." And I wrote it when we were in a team meeting very early on with just the smallest group of original founders. And we all agreed that that was going to be the most important thing for us. We were going to do something that we were really proud of, and we were going to be fiercely competitive. We were going to win, but we were always going to enjoy the journey. And if we ever felt otherwise, then we would need to stop and reflect. So that you can find that sign in my office today. I think that's key.
So before we go, I've got to ask about LeBron James. As a Cleveland Cavaliers fan and watching him come to the Lakers, how excited are you guys to have him in LA?
Well, we threw a big pizza party the other day for him. We love LeBron. He's a great ambassador for us. He's been an investor since the beginning. He's always been a big supporter, and he's always talking about us on social media. So we think, he's a guy that strives for greatness, very consistent with us, and I'm thrilled that he's here because I can go see him in games now.
Yeah, we can't wait to go to more Laker games.
I think the biggest wow moment for me with Blaze was when he switched over to Blaze and left McDonald's. I mean, that for me announced that you guys were here and that you were serious. And I think it seems like the industry really responded to that as well.
Yeah, and I think he looked over. Well, he was an investor early on. Then he became. He's actually a franchise partner in the Chicago and Miami franchises with Larry Levy, and he was leaving McDonald's, and he looked around, and as his group told us, he only does one restaurant, and he says, he wants to throw in with you guys because he likes what you're doing, and he thinks he likes the food, and it's something he would eat. And so he said, let's do something on an endorsement level too. So we've got several different layers of involvement with him, but he's been a great partner for us, and we love having him around.
And you know what I love is he's so authentic. Everything when he tweets or he posts, it's 100% him. We don't write things for LeBron to put onto his feed. This is exactly how he's feeling, and so that's as authentic as you get.
Great. Well, Rick, Elise, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your guys' time.
Awesome. Thanks,
Our
Sam.
pleasure.